much into the jinn history. We're not going to go too much into the jinn, what is it? What is it that the shayateen do and whatnot? Who came first, man or jinn? We're going to get into the fun part, inshallah, right away. So, before we get started, how many of you guys believe in jinn? Raise your hands. Okay, it's the vast majority, inshallah. How many guys don't believe in jinn? Okay, that's nobody, mashallah. All right, so that we can move forward with that. I'm not going to try to convince you to believe in jinn. It's not my job. I'm here to just tell you some of my experiences with and I like the way you phrased it. I had a jinn center. I'm not sure how to take that.
Your brother told me.
As a jinn center. When I first hear of a jinn center, I understand, somebody who's sitting in the middle of an empty house and they're flying around with, I'm not sure, Casper, broomsticks and everything like that. Yes?
If you were to convince somebody, what would you say?
If I were to convince somebody, check out the YouTube videos. It's one of those things like, if you don't experience it, and if you don't have any experience with it, or if you haven't seen any cases, and you haven't gone and answered certain hypotheses, it's real difficult to convince somebody that has no information on it whatsoever. So it goes back to like a philosophical question. Is it safe to believe it? Should we like the philosophical question of God? Should we believe in it? Is it safe to believe in it? If we don't believe in it, are we better off? If we believe in it, are we better off? And kind of evaluate. That's the best thing you can do, because they have when you're talking to somebody who doesn't necessarily believe in it, or who doesn't believe in the Quran, for example, they have no background in it whatsoever. There's no experience. There's no tangible experience. So there's not much that you can do unless you're able to properly educate them. So that being said, my experience with dealing with ruqya, dealing with people, helping people who have had been possessed, if you may, or who have been afflicted with the jinn. I've dealt with thousands of cases, ranging from all different types of cases. Some of which who are very dangerous, very physical, and had broken lots of furniture and put lots of holes in the walls. All the way down to people who just have little nightmares and see things running around the house. So there's a wide range of people who are afflicted with jinn-related issues. So I'm going to split the session, inshallah, into two different sessions. Number one, we're going to have jinn-related issues. What are they? What are some of the symptoms? And how can we identify them? And how can we address them? Then I'm going to go into some of the things that some of you are a little more familiar with, and that is the relationship between mankind and psychological issues, and the difference between the two. Because I think it's very important to understand that there are mental health issues in our community, and they have to be dealt with appropriately. We can't blame everything on the jinn. The guy goes and murders his family. Yes, he had a jinn. Gets off. No, there are mental health issues that we have to deal with. Some of them are genetic, I believe, and some of them, can be developed over time through various traumas or various incidences throughout the life. It can also bring chemicals and hormones and cause various issues. That being said, what are the jinn? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ صَلْصَالٍ مِنْ حَمَإٍ مَسْنُونٍ وَالْجَانَّ خَلَقْنَاهُ مِنْ قَبْلُ مِنْ نَارِ السَّمُومِ. We have created mankind from molded clay. And jinn, we had created him from before, so yes, jinn did come first, from nar al-samum, the smokeless fire. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created jinn from fire. And what the definition of jinn in Arabic is something that is unseen. So when someone is sick and you can't identify the sickness, a mental health sickness. Back before, they would call them majnoon. And if you look at it, the word jinn is also there. Majnoon, right? He has a sickness that is unidentifiable, that we can't see. The person is obviously going through something. There's obviously a sickness, but we can't see that. I'll be taking questions inshallah then. You can write down your questions inshallah. So something that we obviously can't see, we obviously can't identify, but they have something and we just can't put our hands on it. So the word majnoon, or even the Quran, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, iftara ala Allahi kadiban an bihi jannah. He either, they're talking about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he either is fabricating a lie against Allah, or he has a mental sickness, jinnah. And this could be possession, or it could be mental sickness, or whatever it is that you want to call it. But the word majnoon or jinnah is all identified by something that is unseen. You can't see. Hence the title of what we have today. So the word jinn, it means something that cannot be seen. So the various scenarios of, or the various symptoms of the people who have jinn-related problems. And I'm kind of moving a little bit fast here because of the time restriction. I want to get as much as possible, inshallah ta'ala, into the program without having to give you guys, without giving you guys more time than we have. So the symptoms of the people who have jinn-related problems. How many of you guys watch Exorcist? Yeah. That used to be the scariest movie for me. I was scared of that movie for years. How about The Exorcism of Emily Rose? Anyone see that one? No? Anyone ever see an Exorcist movie? Okay, no more hands up, mashallah. What's that one of the older movies? There was The House in New Jersey. What's that? Amityville. You want to see Amityville? They're not as scary anymore. You look at them with the graphics today compared to the graphics back then. It's kind of a joke. But a lot of those stories have a lot of truth in it. But when you look at some of the graphics of when it comes to Hollywood, the head spinning around, that doesn't really happen. People sticking up on the ceiling, that doesn't happen. It has been reported to me that people do float, but I haven't seen it. I've dealt with thousands of cases, but I have never seen a case when someone's levitating, and whether they're standing up levitating, sitting or levitating, or levitating. I haven't seen it. So I can't confirm or deny anything of that nature. Again, there are people who have said they've seen something like that, but I have not seen it whatsoever. Although I have seen a case out here in Dearborn Heights, a case where a lady was lighting on fire, and parts of they had a previous house before. Their house, reportedly, according to her husband, had lit on fire, and in front of me, while I was doing okay on her, she did light on fire, and her husband went and got a bucket of water and poured it on her. It only happened once. Whether it was a trick or Allahu A'lam, it only happened once, and it was the only thing that I've ever seen. I'm getting you guys into it, and I'm kind of pulling you guys in with some of the more exciting stuff. Down in Texas, there's Houston, in Fort Worth, in Fort Worth, Texas. I was in a house, and the ceiling of the living room, there was blood dripping from the ceiling, or what appeared to be blood. It could have been, I don't know, old leaves, but they didn't have any on the roof. They could have had a hole in the roof. There's a lot of explanations that may have, that could possibly explain why that weird phenomenon was happening while we were doing ruqyah. But nonetheless, for me, it appeared to be blood falling from the ceiling. And there was, it could have been something coming from the roof, but there was no evidence of any type of leakage in the ceiling from before nor after. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There have been violent cases. If we have, let's see, while I'm talking here, inshallah, I'm going to go to a YouTube video and I'll show you guys a violent case. So there have been many violent cases, and some of that have been captured on camera. never get this right. Spelling. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Now, mind you, this was a very violent case, but what you're seeing here is a person who's shackled down to the chair. So the chair is a metal chair, shackled down all four, both of his feet and both of his hands. So you really are not going to see much of the violence. As you can see over here, you can see some of the shackles. But there's a lot of cursing. Those are some of the extraordinary things that kind of happen when those are the fun things that happen. Like everybody has those jobs where you know, if you're in accounting, you get this big client. Right? Not all of your clients are going to be big clients that bring millions of dollars. Not all of. If you're an engineer, you're going to be working on this, nice job. You have a nice project within the job. Not all of your jobs. If you're working for Google, you might eventually work on you might have a platform that might, I don't know, make it to the top 20 platforms or interfaces in the world, and you'll be really excited about that. But most of what you do is the normal everyday stuff. The normal everyday stuff. And that's what we're going to kind of focus on, inshallah ta'ala, today. The normal people, which is most people that have gender-related issues. Before I start, I want you to understand that gender-related issues, think of them as like the common cold, or think of them as some type of sickness that anyone can get. No one is exempt from it. The Prophet ﷺ himself was afflicted by black magic. And black magic is something that is done and carried out by the jinn. It's carried out by the shayateen. So he was afflicted, and the Prophet ﷺ, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cured it for him. It's the reason of revelation from Asbab al-Nuzul, for Surah Al-Falaq and Surah Al-Nas. So the Prophet ﷺ was afflicted, and it's something that we believe in, it's something that we accept. And if the Prophet ﷺ was afflicted by it, anyone could be afflicted by it. If someone is afflicted by it, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have bad iman, they're bad people, we should stay away from them, we should stay very far from them. I know some very, very religious and good people who are afflicted with jinn. And it's something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has tested them with, and they have to live with until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cures them from it. How long does it take for a person to get fixed or cured by the jinn if they're going through a repair? That varies from person to person. Sometimes you have people who have jinn-related issues, and they also have many other issues. So themselves or their family may come to them and say, hey, listen, you have a jinn. So everything else that you're doing and everything else that you're going through is jinn-related, which may not necessarily be true. We have to be able to identify and distinguish between the two. What are some of the symptoms of people who are afflicted with jinn-related issues? Number one, they're classified into 3 different classifications. Number 1, dreams. Number 2, what they see or feel when they're awake. Number 3, their reaction to the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or anything related to the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the symptoms that they see, we'll start with the symptoms that they have while they're awake. There's a wide range of symptoms, and each of these symptoms can be a person may have a lot of the symptoms, or they may just suffer from mild symptoms from amongst the symptoms. So for example, from amongst the symptoms that they have when they're awake is obviously seeing things when they're awake. And that may be generated, but it may be, the person may be schizophrenic or bipolar. They may have multiple personalities or disassociative disorder. There are many disorders that people can have that cause delusions or hallucinations. For people to see things or see people, people who are bipolar or manic depression or paranoia, they may feel that people are coming to get them, and that if they have any religious background, they may attribute it to the jinn. And it may not necessarily be true. So seeing things, illusions or hallucinations, delusions or hallucinations is a jinn-related issue. But it's not exclusively a jinn-related issue. Also hearing things. So hearing things, people who suffer from schizophrenia, they hear lots of threats and they hear people telling them to stay away, be careful, or that's poison, or that's going to get people out to get you and whatnot. It's likewise with people who suffer from jinn-related issues. So just because a person hears things does not necessarily mean that they have jinn-related issues, but we're not ruling out the fact that it may be a jinn-related issue. Now, if you see things move around the house or move around the room, you should definitely start reading the Quran because there's probably something in the room. Those things I've seen multiple times in other people's houses. I've seen baby swings just start and the music playing all of a sudden. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I've seen a Sprite bottle, a Sprite can actually, moving across a washing machine. I'm not sure what the jinn was trying to say. If you're thirsty. I didn't stop to try to ask. I've seen things, being thrown across the room, and just real violence occasionally with things moving across the room. And it doesn't happen all the time. So, like, if there's a case where something like that happens, it happens once, and it's like everybody's like, "Whoa, what have you mean?" Whoa. Seeing things move around the house, you may not be crazy, but you might have something going on with you. Some of the symptoms that people have when they're awake, mostly has to do with depression. I have very rarely seen a person who goes through jinn-related issues unless they have accompanied with it depression. It's very rare for them not to have depression. So everybody that I've seen that goes through this issue also has depression. Some of the rabbis have come to the conclusion, some of the have come to the conclusion that depression is jinn-related, period. I disagree with it, but I think depression is a symptom that's related to it, and that may not necessarily mean that the person has jinn-related issues. Some of them go from stomach pains, unexplained stomach pains, and after modern medicine or doctors can come up with no other solution. Usually it's acid, they'll say it's acid reflux or bacteria in the stomach. It's just basically saying, I don't know why your stomach hurts, and hopefully here's some things with some lactose that might calm it down. But it's very common for people to have stomach issues, unexplained stomach issues, and it's been explained to me like feeling punched in the stomach, or sometimes like they need to go to the bathroom really bad, but nothing's coming out. But really, really bad stomach pains. Some people may have migraines, and these migraines are consistent, and they tend to get worse with the eliciting of anything that has to do with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And some people pass out. Some people, and these are not epileptic seizures. Epileptic seizures are very real, and they're not all jinn-related. If you see somebody pass out and you don't know what's going on, please do call 911. Do not attempt to read Quran on them because they could be dying. I'm serious. I remember there was a lady that came to my office one time, and she was talking. And before I asked her some simple questions, what's the history of what's going on with you, and how does this make you feel? And she got so nervous and she passed out in the middle of my office. I hadn't done anything on her yet or anything, and immediately I had to call 911. I said, this is not something related to the jinn. Turns out she had bleeding in her brain. they took her to the ICU right away. So, if you see somebody that passes out, if you see somebody pass out, please do not, go and try to be the super rapi and attempt to be on them. You may kill them. There's a heavy liability on you if you do, especially in the U.S., so be careful. Not just that, but there are your Muslim brothers and sisters, but we can't take things like that lightly. Passing out, going to sleep all of a sudden, that may be a symptom related to the jinn, but it's not exclusively a symptom related to the jinn. When people speaking in different languages, typically this is something that has been recorded in some of the more famous Christian exorcisms. And I've seen that occasionally to be true. I've seen something like that twice, where a person was Somali and all of a sudden he was speaking Italian. And we couldn't communicate with the jinn, period. It was just like, yeah, we give up on that one. When he started speaking Somali again, we had a Somali translator who was translating into Arabic, who was translating. It was complicated. But the guy he started speaking Italian, and we just kind of, all scratched our heads and couldn't figure out what was going on. So, another symptom is when there are unexplained pains. Usually, now there are these two types of pains. One of them is tingling or numbness in various limbs of the body. Now, if someone has experienced any type of trauma, such as a car accident or a fall, and they have any of their discs, their back in the wrong place, or anything from their spinal cord messed up, it can also cause the same type of tingling and numbness. So, one of the questions when people say, yeah, I have this numbness going through my body and tingling, I ask them if they've suffered any type of physical trauma to where it may affect their spinal cord. And for the older people, usually that may be what's causing their numbness in their legs or arms. Unexplained pains. So some people explain to me that they suffer from various soreness, kind of like they worked out really hard, and it's just always sore. So they might say their arms are sore, their legs are sore. Sometimes people have what looks like so their face will start to droop down, kind of like when somebody has a stroke, but it's not a stroke. So half of their face will just droop down. I'm not sure if any of you ever seen one or can tell if somebody's like suffering from stroke. Usually their face is a little bit to the side, and they can barely move there. That's what it looks like, and you're like, wow, you just look like you. But as soon as the look is over, the face just comes back to normal. It's like, some people do suffer from during the time of ruqya or during the time of ibadah, they tend to have those type of symptoms where it looks like part of their face or all of their face is drooping down, like they're going through a stroke or they have gone through a stroke. So those are the physical symptoms that people typically have while they're awake. Some people have reported of seeing animals. Some people have reported, paralysis while they're standing, while they're awake and whatnot. So we go into the symptoms that people have when they are asleep. Typically, the sleep symptoms are divided into two categories. The first category is the category of dreams. And what I'd say, if you have a dream that is repetitive, not once or twice, not 3 times, not, you see a dream this year and in 2050 you see the same dream again and you're like, wow, yeah, I have gym problems. I mean, repetitive to the point to where, it's of a concern. You're not dreaming of anything else. That's all you're dreaming about. Some people constantly dream of dogs. Some people constantly dream of bugs. Some people constantly dream of animals or mountains or water. And they all have certain meanings to them. Each one of them, each type of dream has a meaning related to. These type of dreams are usually related to black magic. So usually if a person, for example, dreams of water all the time and they're drowning, usually indicates that someone has done black magic to them and they put that black magic in a location where there's water. So if you see fire all the time, you can kind of fill in the dots. You see mountains all the time, kind of, or graves. You can kind of make your own conclusion. Like, yeah, I'm always seeing graves, so there must be some magic that has been put in a grave. Usually, if you see snakes a lot or knots, usually it's an indication that there's also magic. But the snakes and knots and dogs and cats, they don't necessarily tell you the location or the type of terrain it may be in. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then the other form of sleep symptoms are the physical symptoms that you feel. Some people have extreme sleep paralysis, right? The Prophet ﷺ, now again, this may be linked to gene-related issues, and it may not. It may not. But the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned, when the person goes to bed, in order to prevent from having, the Prophet ﷺ said there's a special jinn that comes to you while you sleep. In order to avoid that, before you sleep, you wipe your bed 3 times and you say Bismillah. And so this jinn that holds you down so that you can't speak or move, or we know of it today as sleep paralysis. This jinn in particular is avoidable, and we can avoid it by making sure that we follow the Islamic protocol. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet have prescribed for us. Some people experience violence, they experience pain, they feel like somebody's sitting on their chest. Some people experience rape, physical rape, and they wake up, nobody's there. Some people will see somebody actually violating them, but then as soon as their feeling comes back, they don't see anything else. They don't see anybody there. These are and that pretty much sums up the symptoms when you're asleep. As for the symptoms when it comes to the worshiping of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, can someone, and I used to get this on the comments a lot, like trying to figure out, can someone listen to the Quran if they're possessed? What do you guys think? Yes, who says yes for your hand? It's like 3 people. So everybody else, nobody can listen to this. So if you have gender-related issues, you can't listen to the Quran. So that's you guys' test. Turn on YouTube. Just put it next to your brother, sister. And then when they get up and you leave, you're like, exactly what's going on. Sheikh Harun said so. Not necessarily. As a matter of fact, the symptoms, again, are very wide in range. There are people who live absolutely normal lives. Physicians in our community, right? Lawyers in our community. Dentists, accountants, right? Male and female, right? You pray next to them every single day. You pray next to them. The word pray, you pray next to them every single day. They make qiyam with you. They pray tarawih with you. They go to the khutbah with you. But they are suffering from gender-related problems. So yes, if a person is, again, the Prophet ﷺ he didn't stop praying when he was afflicted with jinn. So there are people who, the vast majority, this applies to the vast majority of people, they are able to pray. They're able to do everything that they normally do. They're able to function properly, function normally, and live a normal life. They just they suffer from things that no one else knows about. So yes, a person can listen to the Quran. Some of the symptoms, and I'll go over here, I'm going to go to the beginning portion of the video so that you guys can see. This is my typical evaluation on how it starts. And what we're looking for in the beginning is when ruqya, certain verses are being recited out loud, you look for a certain, the first thing that you see is kind of a shaking of the hands. So here, we haven't started yet. Okay, so just things handcuffs. Boy, AKA. So typically what you see, the first portion of, the first sign that a person is afflicted is that the weakest limbs of the person's body start to shake. So usually when I first start, I'll have somebody usually sit like this, sit down and have their hands out kind of like this so that I can see their hands. And it kind of puts a little strain on them. This way, when their hands start to get tired, their hands start to shake. And usually their hands shake a little bit and they start to open up. And I tell them, close your hands. Sometimes they'll close them, they'll open right back up. I'll say, close them. They'll close them and they'll open right back up. Some people just won't be able to close them. I say, close them. And their hands start to curl just a little bit. And I can say, at that point, I'll tell them, it's pretty obvious that there's an issue, right? And we are pretty aware, we can understand, we can both agree that the issue is jinn-related, because I'm reading Quran on you. I'm using the verses of adab, of punishment. I'm using the verses of black magic. I'm using the verses of the evil eye, and you're being affected by them directly and immediately. That rules out, and that's my criteria for ruling out everything else. At that point, now even if a person may have any type of mental disorder, such as being bipolar or schizophrenic or whatever other mental illness, at that point, I still have not ruled out any type of mental illness, but we now have on the table that this person is afflicted by by either black magic, the evil eye, or just pure possession. Now, when you get into the ruqya and trying to help a person, the best type of ruqya, the best type of helping a person is, when you do it when they help themselves. Hence, yes, people can listen to the Quran and worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala during the time. The best way to help, or the best way for someone to be helped is when they are able to do ruqya on themselves and follow a rigorous program that requires hours out of the day, in order to be able to get to a completely cured lifestyle. So if a person is able to, then it's always best for them to help themselves. Sometimes people are not able to. And when they're not able to, it's important for them to have someone who can come to them and perform ruqya on them. And it's a very strenuous, long process. Some people are cured within months. Some people are cured within a day. Some people can take years. And what I think for the people who take years, typically their gender-related issue is usually tied in with a whole bunch of other issues, mental related and otherwise. They may have other physical complications. They may have medical complications and whatnot. So it's important for them to follow up with their doctors, follow up with their psychologists or psychiatrists, even when they're doing ruqya, because it could be a wide array of things. It doesn't necessarily have to just be gender-related. So same thing, for example, like if somebody has cancer, nose cancer or lung cancer or stomach cancer, the doctor doesn't say, oh, that's stomach cancer. Okay, we're going to forget about all the other. We're going to forget about your pneumonia. We're going to forget about your amputated leg. We're going to forget about your diabetes. We're just going to focus on the cancer. It doesn't work that way. You have to see the person's sickness as a complete package of, or sometimes a complete, again, a wide array of possible wide array of issues. That being said, we're going to go into one of the stories, inshallah ta'ala. That was a little summary of the gender-related issues. So when someone sees a jinn or someone feels like there's a jinn in the house, usually it's not the house itself. Usually it's someone within the house. And a family member can have effects, a family member who's affected can have effects on other family members. Typically, for example, when a mom comes to me and says, my son, my daughter, who's like 5 or 6 years old, is having a problem, I'll say, make sure everybody comes, or make sure everybody shows up, so that when I read on them, I can read on everybody. And I know it usually, in a situation like that, usually one of the parents starts to react. They start to have, gender-related issues, and they, the first 2 minutes they're not able to close their hands, and then it just kind of down spirals after that. So yeah, if a person has gender-related issues, usually, if a child is showing, if a person has gender-related issues, usually other family members can be affected by it who are living. Does it mean that other people within the family are possessed? No, it's not. So it's not contagious to the point to where it's like cooties. You sit next to your brother or sister or mom and dad, and all of a sudden you're convulsing, and they touch you, and you touch the next person, and the next person, and the dog and the cat. And he just gave him salams, hoping to give vision to him. So it doesn't happen that way. It seems like there's almost like an assignment to get this person. Although I haven't gotten to the bottom of that. It requires a lot of study, but it seems like there's some type of assignment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is, I have seen inherited possession. Usually, if there is a family member who practices black magic, a real practitioner of black magic. I'm not talking about a card trick magician, or somebody who can take your nose away and put in their finger. I'm talking about a real practitioner of black magic. People who hibernate for months and do things, in order to worship, in order to summon their spirits, the spirits that they're looking for. That's what they call them. We know them to be jinn, right? And there's going to be one of the stories that we're going to talk about in the end. We're going to talk about a magician. His name is, he's an ex-magician. He's from Sudan. He was telling a story in Arabic. I forget his name, I'm sorry, I have to look him up. But he gives a very nice account on what happened and how he became a magician. And his story is not uncommon. And yeah, there are a lot of very bad things that they do in order to become a magician. And one might say, yeah, they're free to do what they want. I mean, it's America, whatever. So, one of the stories, one of my first cases was with a guy who had become Muslim. He was an ex-gangster from Grand Rapids. I didn't know they had gangsters in Grand Rapids. Wow, Grand Rapids has gangsters. SubhanAllah. He was a biker. Gothic biker. So obviously he wasn't African American. He was a white guy. Big guy. MashaAllah, the guy is huge. The guy was huge. Like, he could break somebody's skull. This guy, huge. Real gentle. Ex-gangster, came into Islam, made Tawbah, started a family, has a beautiful wife and kids. One day he comes to me, and this is like one of my first cases. So I was kind of still in disbelief that this could happen to anybody I know. There's no way. This is all bad. It's imaginary. And, again, remember, helping thousands of people with ruqya. As a kid, the scariest movie for me was The Exorcist. It's real ironic. So I was kind of in disbelief, and he came to my house, and we were having lunch. He was like, yeah, I think I have gender-related issues. I was like, no, you don't, man. Get that out of here. That was literally my response. I just like, you don't get that out of here. I think I had like a ping pong table downstairs. He was like, I was like, yeah, after we're done eating, let's go eat that ping pong. And he's like, no, I'm serious. I'm like, you're serious, aren't you? I was like, yeah. He said, a brother that had similar issues to me has, the sheikh read on him, and it turned out he had gym problems. I was like, all right. I had him musalla in my house. We went to the musalla, and I had him lay down. I had my brother and two other brothers come in, my neighbors, and I had them hold him down, because I didn't know what to expect at that point. All I knew was the scariest thing that I've ever seen was an exorcist, and I'm about to do an exorcism. So I had, my brother, big guy. Anybody seen Abdullah? Abdullah was like huge, mashallah. The guy, like, the Eiffel Tower. That's him. Go to France. Go to New York. Statue of Liberty. That guy, mashallah. Guy's huge. Anyway, so he's holding the guy. I said, hold him down tight. And then my other neighbor, he was at his feet and he was holding him down. And the other neighbor was holding his other foot down. I'm like, I got this. These guys are. So I started reading on him. And I started reading on Surah Al-Fatiha 3 times, and then I started reading Surah Al-Ikhlas 3 times, and I started reading Surah Al-Falaq. In the middle of Surah Al-Falaq, he started screaming at the top of his lungs, ah! And I jumped. So I started reading Surah Al-Falaq again, and he started huffing and puffing. He said, no. I'm like, what's your name? I'll never tell you my name. I was like, if you don't tell me your name, I'm going to keep on reading. He's like, Jacob. Imagine having this guy trying to keep a secret from you. It's not happening. Don't tell anybody. Never. You're not going to get a popsicle. So, I'm reading on. I said, so, how long are you? I said, what's your age? And I don't remember the age that he told me. And I said, you're lying to me. That's not your age. He said 70. I said, you're 70 years old. He's like, yeah. I said, so why are you here? He said, because he killed my dad. I was like, how did he kill your dad? He's like, he shot him. I said, he shot your dad? And like thinking of it now, I would have asked some more dumb questions, for lack of better terms. Some more sarcastic questions. But I said, let me talk to him. So I called the brother's name, and I said, Assalamu alaikum. I mean, he went down from this really weird, aggressive voice to, the really nice, soft-spoken guy. He's like Mike Tyson. You know Mike Tyson is like real big, and he's like, hi guys. Yeah. So we're back down to the Mickey Mouse voice. And I said, I talked to the jinn, and the jinn said he's here because you killed his dad. He's like, what do you mean I killed his dad? I said, he said, you shot him. He said, he started crying. I was like, wow, there must be some truth to the story. So he said, if it's the guy that I think it is, so I'm thinking in my head, how many guys have you shot? It's like a normal thing. If it's the guy that you think it is, that I think it is, then somebody needs to do it. So apparently, he killed somebody back in the days of him being a thug on a bike. So I thought it was a stereotype for those guys to be like mean and aggressive and everything. It's people die, and bikers do it sometimes. Just like I guess anybody can do it. But yeah, I didn't think that was a real thing. So apparently the jinn had possessed, the jinn's father possessed a guy that our guy goes and shoots. When the guy dies, that is possessed by the jinn's father, the jinn dies, according to Jacob. Now, there's no way for me to verify any of this story, except for I'm pretty sure that there's a dead guy. I didn't ask any further questions, and I didn't really want to know or anything like that, but I was pretty sure that I've concluded that there's a dead guy somewhere in this human being. But according to Jacob, that the father of Jacob died with the guy that got shot. So he started crying, so I told him I didn't mean to do it, I didn't really mean to do it. So then I said, let me speak to Jacob. So I started reading the Quran. Jacob comes out and he's like, I want to help this guy. I was like, if you want to help them, why don't you take a shahada, go learn how to become learn how to be a proper Muslim from other jinns and whatnot. And I want you to leave. So he started doing this movement with his feet, and then he left. Now, that was one of my first cases, right? This is what I learned. A lot of the jinns that take their shahada are liars. They're lying. They're still there. A lot of the people who make that foot movement or finger movement like they're leaving, and or they do that breath thing like and like, it's a show. The jinn is still there. So my first case was a complete failure. The guy felt better for a while. And then he said later on, he said, I think I still have problems and whatnot, and he was dealing with them. So one of my first cases was a complete and utter failure, but it was because of my lack of knowledge. What I've come to learn is that the best way to deal with it is try not to have much conversations with them at all. Just focus on reading the Quran, that person. All of the questions that you're gonna ask them, I promise you can find them on YouTube. You don't need to go and ask the same jinn the same questions that everybody's been asking on YouTube every single day. If you have a loved one who is sick with it, with one of the jinns, focus on curing them and don't focus on curing your curiosity fetish. Because that person is sick and they need your help. Focus on the Quran. If you're still curious, you can very easily go on YouTube, look at this video. There's a lot of questions being asked just for the camera. Now this case took like 8 months. So there's a lot of questions being asked literally for the camera so that people can understand. And a lot of the people who do Ruqya will have a lot of questions that are asked on the camera. So if you have any questions, feel free to go onto YouTube and Google them. Half the things that you're going to find out over there are going to be lies, but they will probably be things that the jinns say, because jinns lie a lot. Anything that they do tell you, please do verify, verify, verify. One of their biggest tricks, and their funnest tricks, is to cause problems between family members. So what will they do? They'll come in, and the Raqi, or the person who's trying to help them, starts talking to the jinn. What's going on? Why are you here? Who sent you? Right? This is like double jeopardy for the jinn. Like, man, I get so much for this one. I mean, what is the most favorite sin that Iblis loves? Or what is the most favorite action that Iblis loves? Anybody know?
A fight between a man and his wife.
A fight between a divorce, right? Or a separation of a community. Problems between people. Oh, he loves that, because then there's like all that stuff in between that's gonna happen. All the problems. He loves that. So who do you think the jinn's gonna call out? That person you suspect the most. It's my neighbor. Yeah, Aisha. Just stop, it's Aisha, she did it. How's she doing? She put some water in the pot. She blew on it. She put it in a diaper. It's hidden. Deep in the ocean. Can't find it. And I've seen people go at it because they believe what the jinn say. They believe that, and for anybody who's sick, one of the primary questions is, can we find out who did it? No, we're not gonna go there, because then the jinn is gonna say a name of somebody you don't like, and one of the worst ones is, like, for example, when a person is married to like 2 or 3 wives, and then the wife is sick, and then she'll say it was the other wife, she did it. Oh man, oh, hell breaks loose. Allahu Akbar. Yeah, that one, that's the evil one. And then the word goes around that she's a magician. And the biggest, I remember, wallahi, this one lady called me, right? And she was saying that my next door neighbor has done black magic on me. In the same week, the next door neighbor called me and was saying that my next door neighbor is doing black magic on me. Why? Why do you think they thought that? The jinni said so. Each time. Both of them are people who pray, fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, make qiyam and fast, and they do everything that they possibly can. But the jinni said it. She did it. So now you have 2 next door neighbors who used to love each other and don't talk. Why? Because the jinni said so. When we're doing ruqya, try to focus on the cure and don't focus on excessive curiosity we have. Alhamdulillah, there's a lot of information that you can find online. Try to stick to reliable sources, inshallah ta'ala, and you will get to the bottom of the questions that you have around them. So now, in terms of some of the mental illnesses, the biggest and the easiest way for me to differentiate between mental illness and gender-related issues is having people go through a proper evaluation. And this, what you see here, the first 15, 20 minutes of it is literally how an evaluation goes. Now, you see the aggressiveness and everything. Evaluations don't usually turn that way. They're usually very peaceful evaluations. And people, after they're done, they'll report to me whatever symptoms that they had. And these symptoms may range anything from a little pain on the chest, a little pain in the limbs, all the way to migraines, passing out, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of the other symptoms that I mentioned to you before. So, what is usually the cause for possession? From my experience, what usually causes possession is usually A, black magic, B, the evil eye. Some people report to have gotten possessed for some random thing, but yet they all show symptoms of usually being possessed via black magic. So I do believe that there are people who just get possessed just like that, Allahu A'lam. But from what I've seen, it's typically black magic or evil eye. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So to the story of one of the mashayikh that this story is on YouTube. It's in Arabic. He's from Sudan. It's an 8-video series. Each one is like 2 hours long. So if you ever are interested, the guy, I forget his name, but maybe I'll do a research here while we're talking. So his story is that he was this is him, Hamid Adam. So his name is Hamid Adam, and he was a very well-known magician in Sudan back when he was a magician, and he was known for, believe it or not, his Islamic knowledge. So, and that brings a very important point. Many people who claim, to be a sheikh are not necessarily working in your best interest. Take this as a point of thumb. If they claim to know the unseen, if they claim to know things about your life that they shouldn't be knowing, then know that they're talking to somebody that they shouldn't be talking to. If they give you any type of charms or anything like that, or ta'weez, we call them, or hijab, we call them, right? Or humayliya, or charm, or good luck charm, or anything like that, to help you get more money or anything like that, 99% of the time, they are black magic charms, and they've gone through a long extent to get them. The story of Hamid Adam, I'm gonna summarize it for you, because we have about 7 minutes. So the story of Hamid Adam is that he was a well-known magician, but he was not known as a magician. He was known as a well-known sheikh and a well-known scholar in the southern Sudanese region. And the way that he got there was he had to go through a process of apprenticeship with other mashayikh, scholars, and then his mashayikh invited him into the circle. One of the other mashayikh had died, and his mashayikh invited him into the circle to learn the secret knowledge. They're called al-Musir, al-Mughayb, al-Mulladunni, right? People say you have the Zahir knowledge, but the Prophet ﷺ has taught us the Batin and al-Batin. You have the apparent knowledge, but the Prophet ﷺ taught certain people the secret knowledge. And they refer to Abu Hudayfa Abdurrahman, Abu Hudayfa al-Yaman, who was the secret keeper of the Prophet ﷺ. And because we don't know all the things that the Prophet ﷺ told him, they kind of leverage that and say, yeah, see, the Prophet ﷺ taught him secrets. And the secrets that he taught him were the secrets of who was a hypocrite and who was not. Not all of this other hocus pocus stuff that is taught by a black magic. So the task that he gave him, he said, once you start this task, you can't stop. You have to go through it. He said, pick a number. So he said 37. 37. And then he said, how many dates do you want? He said, I want 3. And so the rituals, there were certain things that he had to recite. He was told to go into a room that was in seclusion. So it was a room kind of away from everybody else. This room had no bathroom, no nothing. And he was to stay there for 37 days, reciting certain rituals throughout the day and night at certain times. He was to pray twice a day with no clothes on. He was not to wash himself or clean himself. And he was to eat 3 dates per day and drink a certain amount of water every day. And that water wasn't to leave the room either. So he was only allowed to drink a certain amount of water, and it was portioned to last throughout the entire time. Now you can imagine, this person is using the bathroom on himself, is sleeping in it, is eating around it, praying with no clothes on, and it's a very, and he was doing all of this in order to attract the jinn, so that he can get and attain this secret knowledge, secret information. And this is not uncommon. A lot of you guys may see this, but you don't realize it. Like, for example, when you look up, the Amazonian witch doctors, right? Or the Mongolian shamans, and you see how dirty they look, and how and all of and how like ripped up everything looks. They don't look very good. They do this in order to continuously please these spirits. Okay? So, at the end, he said that the first third of this term, he said he felt like the jinns were testing him. They came to him with everything that he feared. And he said for people who go through this, they start out by coming to them with everything that they fear. He said he said, for example, if you fear frogs, they'll come at you with with an image of a frog, for example, and it'll be chasing you. You have to stand your ground, and you have to not be shaken by it. He said then the second period, so there's 3 periods. The second period, you go through, they start to test your physical abilities and your mental ability. He said the third portion of it, they start to teach you things that you didn't know. And then you come out, and apparently you would have attained this secret knowledge, or a portion of it. You started your journey into attaining the secret knowledge, and now you have a jinni guardian who's there with you all the time, that you have to please, and you have to make contracts with, and you have to make agreements with, and usually those agreements pass down through your lineage for generations. I've seen people who are affected 3-4 generations down the line. So what people do in order to become magicians is completely against the Quran, it's completely against the Sunnah, and it's not hygienic. It's horrible. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from it. So, as a rule of thumb, in order to stay on the straight path, you know, when you go, if you ever feel like you're afflicted by any of this, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all, and you start asking around, two things will help you. If the shaykh claims that he knows things that he doesn't know, that he shouldn't be knowing, even if he says, I need to go make salat istikhara and come back and I'll have the answer for you, you don't make salat istikhara and the answer comes to you in Revelation. This doesn't have this. Revelation has ended with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, with the exception of righteous dreams for the believers, which we cannot control. So the shaykh claims to know things about you that he shouldn't be knowing, then you need to stay away from him. Even though he may be in the masjid, you know, be very careful. Number two, if the shaykh gives you any type of charm, then be careful. And this with on a good note, inshallah ta'ala. There was a shaykh in Mali. He went over to Mecca to study. He came back and he was a very well-known shaykh in his village. When he studied, he came back, and whenever the mashayikh, or whenever the people would call the adhan, he would go lock himself in his house, and they would say, where were you? He would say, I went to Mecca and I prayed. I came back. So one of the guys was really smart, so he invited him over to the house, his house, to spend the night. They ate, they had a good time. He gave him lots and lots of water. Fajr time came, a little bit before Fajr time. The guy left the house and locked the door. He locked the sheikh inside of the house, right inside of the room. So the sheikh is like, the adhan is called and the sheikh needs to use the bathroom. He's like, let me out, let me out, let me out. He said, but Fajr just passed, didn't you go to Mecca? You need the bathroom over there. And then it was known that he was a liar. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Any questions? I'm sure you guys all have questions, but you don't want it to be awkward. Yes?
So, we talk about magic and jinns, right? And there's, usually when we talk about magic, there's like two categories. And people misunderstand when they say, what do you mean by magic? So could you explain?
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes magic as two different types. The first type of magic is the swift change of hands, right? The illusions that we can do, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does describe it as magic. And when he describes, when he talks about Musa, so there are some people who disagree with this, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly indicates that that is a type of magic. But that's not the type of magic that may send you, may put you into a state of kufr. Nonetheless, because it has certain implications for ignorant people, we want to be careful when we're doing it. You know, you can go, you know, back home and you start doing magic tricks, and you know, people. There are places where people do magic tricks and people are worshipped. They are literally worshipped, and yeah. It's frustrated that way. But yeah, there are two different types of magic. The first type of magic that every scholar agrees upon is the magic that contains kufr, where you are literally worshipping the jinn and the shayateen. Okay, and you're doing horrible things in order to attain a specific goal. This one is clearly kufr. This one's clearly shirk. Okay. The second, there's a difference of opinion as to whether it takes you out of the fold of Islam, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Questions? You guys all understood everything? MashaAllah. Jazakumullah khair. Subhanakallah wa bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum.